Okay, for us to kick off. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Liam Nolan, Irish Branch Chair. I would like, on behalf of the Pipeline Industries Guild Irish Branch, to welcome you to our webinar today on the N4 Realignment Collooney to Castlebaldwin Road Scheme. The scheme was awarded to Roadbridge in 2019 and is due to open later this year. We have a chat facility available for your questions. Please add your questions as we go along, and we'll come to them at the end of the presentation, and we'll get through as many of your questions as we can. The N4 realignment scheme will complete the upgrade of the N4 in County Sligo, bringing the road up to modern standards. And we're delighted to have with us today 4 speakers to present on this scheme. The speakers today will be Brendan D'Hora, Design Project Director, Fehily Timoney; Brian Snow, Project Manager, Roadbridge; Sean Fitzsimon, Design Project Manager with Clandillon Civil Consulting; and Billy Bowen, Lead Structural Designer with Fehily Timoney. At the end of the presentation, we also hope to show a video, and we will be taking your questions at that time during the video. So feel free to drop in your questions as we go along. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask Byrne to start his presentation. Byrne.
Thank you, Liam. As Liam mentioned, I'm Byrne D'Hora, the Design Project Director, and I'll give you a brief project introduction and background. Then I'll hand over to Brian, the Roadbridge Project Manager, who'll give you an overview on the construction, followed by Sean Fitzsimons and Billy Bowen, who will give you an overview of the design and the structures design respectively. And then we'll have our video fly through where we'll be endeavoring to answer any questions that you have. The location of this project is just southeast of Sligo town and starts at the Tubber Bridge roundabout in Collooney and heads down towards Castlebaldwin village. The first couple of kilometers are an online upgrade, and you can see the existing road there, hopefully in dark grey. The red outline is the limit of works, which shows where the new alignment is going. Most of it offline to the west of the existing road, curving around to the east and connecting up with Castlebaldwin village towards the south. The background to the project, if anyone has driven that road in the past, they'll know that it's a single carriageway of varying carriageway widths and cross sections. There's a lot of existing accesses to it, with 24 junctions, a number of houses and field accesses, and that combination means that there's very limited opportunities for safe overtaking, and that's resulted in a number of fatalities over the years. One notable feature of the existing road is those white crosses that have been placed there by local action groups, which you will see if you're driving it in the past. So the key objective really, is very much improving safety for users. But in addition to that, by reducing journey times, you encourage employment and investment in the region, increasing quality of life and accessibility. And of course, there's a lot of improvements can be made for pedestrians and cyclists in the area as well. A bit of a timeline to the project. The planning submission would have gone into Onboard Planola back in 2013, and the environmental impact statement and compulsory purchase orders confirmed in 2014. They would have a notice to enter then in 2015, with advanced works, including extensive archaeological investigations and ground investigations completed 2016 to 2018. It is an area rich with archaeology and complex ground conditions. Procurement of a design build contractor was occurred through 17 and 18, including your standard, consultation meetings and the submission of a tender design from the competing parties. Ultimately, that led in an award to Roadbridge and ourselves as designers as the successful design build contractor. with that appointment occurring with government approval in January 2019. Construction's been ongoing as well as design. Design is well done at this stage, but construction's ongoing with a road opening date, hopefully in Q3 of this year. The project itself, you'll hear more about from Sean and Brian and Billy. Essentially, it's 15 kilometres of new carriageway. A portion of that is online upgrade of the single carriageway to dual carriageway, about 11 kilometres of offline dual carriageway, a number of tie-ins and side roads to connect it in, as well as 4 kilometres of footway, a large number of structures, including 12 major bridge structures, 40 culverts, various minor structures of various types. The key stakeholders, the sponsoring agency employer is Sligo County Council. Sanctioning authority is Transport Infrastructure Ireland. Employer's rep is Barry's Transportation. The main contractor is Roadbridge Limited. And then ourselves as designers, Fehily Timoney and Company, Clandillon Civil Consulting, Byrne Looby Partners, and Rambo UK. And then with that, now I'll hand over to Brian, who will take you through the construction.
Thanks, Byrne. Sorry, Liam, it's not allowing me to share for some reason.
Okay. I don't know, Kate, can you bring up the presentation?
You should be okay now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, looks like it's starting now, Brian.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon all. I suppose just to mention, Roadbridge were appointed main contractor for this project in January 2019. Works on site then commenced in March of 2019, and the anticipated completion is hopefully Q3 of 2021. Project consists of 13.9 kilometres of type 2 dual carriageway and 0.8 kilometres of single carriageway, a compact grade separated junction, 8 kilometres of side roads, a 3 kilometre cycle track, 12 bridges consisting of 4 overbridges and 8 underbridges, 5 roundabouts, 2 which are on the main line and 3 on side roads, 40 culverts, drainage, utilities and accommodation works. Currently we have about 19 members of staff on site. Just a brief view of our organisation chart. At peak time last year, we had in the region of 34 members of staff. Again, at present, we have about 76 operators. At peak construction last year, we had 265 with 150 items of plant. Some high level figures in the project. We had 1.8 million cubes of cut material, with almost 1.1 of this cut unsuitable for road embankments. Testing of material was to determine suitability for placement in the earthwork embankment. Tested approximately 1 sample every 1,000 cubes. All unsuitable material was managed within the LMA and disposed of in deposition areas or upfilling of borrow pits, of which we had 2 number on the project, where we processed and blasted rock to make 1C and 6F2 material. So you can see the numbers there with 220,000 cubes of 1C, 92,000 cubes of capping, 45 of sub-base, 30 of CBM, 24 of base course, 15 of binder and 11 of wearing course, high level numbers. There was a mass hall developed at the beginning of the project to ensure the most efficient haul distance used for cutting and filling material. Poor ground material proved a major challenge for us. Peat depths range from approximately 2 to 8 metres, which was a challenge. In peak construction during the summer of 2020, we were hauling about 100,000 cubes per week. Now, weather was a key factor, and in the northwest, it was always a challenge. 12 number structures in the project. First 2.5 kilometres of the N4 from the N17 roundabout to structure 2, which is just 2.5 kilometers. I suppose the scope of works initially was to remove this traffic from the main line onto the eastern parallel link to allow us construct these 2 bridges and the widening and overlay section, which included about 70,000 cubes of fill on the approach to structure 2. The design of the local roads were generally offline of the existing footprint. Therefore, there was minimal disruption to road users. Road embankments were constructed offline, the bridge was constructed, and then there was a road order in place for a closure to complete the tie-in and divert traffic onto the new alignment. Structure 11 at Ardloy then is the point where the existing and new alignment intersect. The structure was constructed without any road closures. The beam lift took place in December 2019, was carried out at night time, and was carried out again with minimum disruption to road users. Just give you an overview of this structure 11 at Ardloy, where you have the existing N4 and the new N4 reversing over it. Again, structure 6, which was completed last year, which is a side road at Drumfin. And probably one of the milestones in the project was the last beam lift in October of 2020 at structure 8. So the last of our 87 beams on the 7 overbridges was lifted on. So pavement, Lagan Asphalt, or pointed pavement contractor, placing CBM and asphalt layers. There's 12 different pavement types in the project for mainline, access roads and local roads. 110,000 tonne of asphalt, 75,000 tonne of CBM. Lagans have used a full width paver, which has increased production and eliminated longitudinal joints and is more efficient than your standard paver. Just a brief shot of the asphalt in operation last year. Environmental surveys, RB have a dedicated environmental officer on site since project commencement. Walkover surveys were conducted by our Roadbridge ecologists before works commenced to inspect for active habitats. We also identified invasive species and followed TII guidelines for dealing with these, and these included giant hogweed, Japanese knotweed and rhododendron. Ecological surveys include brash and hedgerow clearance, macro integrate surveys of 11 number water courses to determine water quality using Q value system. Surveys results compared year on year to determine impact of construction works. To counteract the removal of a number of badger sets within the LMA, an artificial set was created and the set was monitored with a trail camera to determine its success. And following completion of stream and river channels, electrofishing was carried out on abandoned channels. Environmental monitoring includes dust monitoring, groundwater monitoring, surface water monitoring, and noise and vibration monitoring. I touched on it earlier. I suppose one of the key elements of the project was diversion of the N4 traffic to the eastern parallel link. So this is the most northern part of the project at Tubberbride, down as far as structure 2. I don't know, sorry. So the eastern parallel link runs in line with the main line, ties in with the existing N4 at chainage 2500. That diversion was put in place last September. It allowed us construct structure 1, Tubberbride Overbridge, and structure 2, Durley Underbridge, along with the earthworks, drainage, ducting, and the upfill of the embankment on the approach to structure 2. That's the photo taken last September. In the middle of that section, you can see the eastern parallel link to the right, where the N4 traffic was diverted to, and the mainline works and culvert installation there at chainage 1000. Again, a photo was taken from last September. Structure 2 in the background, the eastern parallel link with the N4 traffic on the left hand side, and obviously main line in the center. So that particular structure had 75,000 cubes of fill imported for it, and then there was a widening operation on the approach to that bridge and all the way back to Tubberbride, which was ongoing for the last few months. It's more recent photo taken in March. Structure 1 bridge mainline works is progressed since then. Surfacing works in this area will commence next week. And again, the eastern parallel to the left and the greenway, 3 kilometre greenway to the left of that, again near the LMA. And again, just from the south end of that eastern parallel link looking north, structure 2 there in the centre of the picture. Roadbridge are registered partner of Consider Constructor Scheme and agree to the Code of Practice and other schemes. Consider Constructor Scheme is an organisation founded to raise the standards in the construction industry. The code is broke down into 5 parts: caring about appearance, respecting the community, protecting the environment, securing everyone's safety, and valuing their workforce. Attached is our performance chart from 2019, where we received an average score of 42.2 throughout all our projects. And to date, we've received 4 gold, 3 silver, 5 bronze, along with 9 innovations. Our highest score was 47 out of 50 on the Onany Wind Farm project in Mayo. Some of the initiatives to date were visits to local schools to provide information on local biodiversity and promote environmental awareness and sustainability. The installation of electric charging point in our main site compound. Installation of artificial badger sets and rainwater harvesting tank in our site compound. Use of natural stone and turving to mimic original channels where there was diversions put in place. And managing COVID-19, I suppose, has been a difficult year. We're dealing with COVID-19 now just over a year, and managing this process and procedures has proved challenging. A number of these procedures have been introduced by the CIF, but Roadbridge have also introduced a suite of policies and procedures that are in place throughout all our sites, such as the standing operating procedure and a COVID-19 preventative policies for offices and sites, and COVID-19 site-specific management plan. So that's it for me. So I'll pass you over to Sean, who will take you through the design.
Thanks, Brian. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So as Brian mentioned there, I was design project manager for the design team. So just to tell you a little bit more about the design team involved and the other consultants involved in the design. Fehily Timoney, the Carolyn Road Project Director, we met Byrne earlier, and did the structures and the environmental design. CCC, who I work for, we were project manager and health and safety coordinator on the project, and we did the civils design. Ramble did the river structures from the UK, and Byrne Looby did the geotechnical design. There's some of the other consultants involved. Atkins were the drainage and structures checker, and GDG were the earthworks checker. CST, based in Sligo, were the road safety auditor for the scheme. So the tender process, I mentioned, kind of was it 2018, involves 3 consultation meetings with the employer, where the employer, the contractor, and their designer come together to discuss the project and potential optimizations. So you have 3 consultation meetings prior to making a consolidated outline proposals, which form the basis of your tender submission, which will be submitted shortly thereafter. The tender process gives you the opportunity, obviously, to try and tweak the design and gain some advantage over other contractors who'd be bidding the works. This is just one example of something where we were able to tweak the design to good effect. So what you see on the left of the screen here is a 13-meter embankment We were able to change the alignment around to bring the embankment down to 7 meters. And in doing so, we were able to generate a little bit of space to the north there, shift the whole alignment to the north and avoid the area of forest ground here where there was a particularly deep section of peat. So I suppose that allowed us to reduce the earthworks above ground, but also make a significant decrease in the earthworks below ground as well. And as I recall, there was also a piled embankment that was due to be provided there, and we were able to avoid the need for the piled embankment by moving out of the worst ground. This is just that same area now constructed. So as you can see there, just to the north of this Tauna under bridge, there was due to be a 13-meter embankment, reduced down to 7, which obviously we would hope it was a benefit to to everybody involved, really. Properties nearby kind of have a much less visual intrusion on them, carbon footprint and construction noise. Okay. So just I'll tell you a little bit about the detailed design. So I'm going to talk you through the alignment design, drainage design, the earthworks design, and the pavement design before handing over to Billy, who'll tell you a little bit about the structures. So during the detailed design, we were able to make some further tweaks to the alignment, and we were able to increase the suitable material generated from cuttings by 170,000 meters cubed, decrease the bulk fill by approximately 140,000 meters cubed versus the tender design. Overall, and I know there was some debate about this the last time we made this presentation, but there was a 30% reduction in bulk volumes versus the specimen design. I've looked back on that, there's actually a 50% reduction in embankment volumes, and the fact that it's, that came down to 30% was just based on the fact that we weren't able to do as much below ground, and probably there was an increase in volumes relative to embankment size below the earthworks outline, where we had to take out soft material. So ultimately, as Brian mentioned, the scheme was balanced. Scheme balance was achieved through the use of on-site borrow pits. So there's two large and probably one smaller rock borrow pit, which both serve to provide rock for the project, and also areas where unsuitable material was disposed of. Okay, that's just a photo there of one of the borrow pits. You can see the size of it by reference to the excavator at the base. It's just a quick video. If I can play this, just again giving you an impression of the size and scale of the operation. There's actually that borrow pit there is probably only halfway through there. There's another couple of lifts down from the level you see there, but a large undertaking in and of itself. Okay. So just to tell you a little bit more about the alignment design, one of the initiatives we tried to progress through the detailed design was along the eastern parallel link road, which Brian referred to earlier. So in the concept design, there was a footpath provided alongside the eastern parallel link. We sought to change that from a footpath to what is effectively a greenway designed to greenway standards by moving that out towards the fence line. So the intention there was that we'd increase the amenity and safety for users, but also that we would reduce the earthworks, as a lot of the EPL is up on embankment or relatively deep cutting, whereas outside the fence line we would typically be able to keep it at grade. So we reduced the earthworks, but we also reduced the drainage earthworks. So the drainage works quite significantly. So you probably be able to see that there was a curved and closed drainage system initially in concept design, and we were able to change that to such drainage systems effectively either over the edge or filter drains with no current once we'd gotten rid of the footpath or moved the footpath to the fence line. So as it was during detailed design stage, we had to progress that proposal through what's called a variant conceptual design process, whereby we put together a technical submission for the employer and put it to them to accept that proposal and see the merit in that proposal, which they duly did. This proposal here is something that's supported by the design standards in Ireland at least. So one of the standards that's where practical cycle pedestrian facilities should be provided within the maintenance strip. Probably I would suggest something that we're going to see more of projects in Ireland going forward. Just to tell you a little bit about the drainage design then. We, I suppose from the outset, we placed a fairly heavy emphasis on the use of sludge drainage systems. There's sustainable drainage systems such as filter drains, swales, grass surface water channels, rather than concrete systems. But one of the reasons we place such an emphasis on the use of sludge systems is because we believe that sludge systems are necessary if you're going to control the volume of runoff from your site. So attenuation ponds do a good job at controlling the rate of runoff from development, but they're not so good at controlling the volume of runoff. So obviously when you pave a large section of road, you pave a large section of the landscape that previously allowed water to infiltrate, you're going to increase the volume. So you need measures in your drainage design to ensure that you are reducing that water volume down to pre-construction levels. And so systems is a way to do that. This is just some of the background from the SUDS manual. I'm going into it in detail. So just one of the SUDS systems that we developed was the use of a lined grass surface water channel. We did require a departure from standard to use this. So the departure was granted based on the contents of the EIS for the scheme, which envisaged the use of a lined grass surface water channel. We also noted in our departure application that there's a contract requirement to use SUDS systems. Developed this detail using past experience, so it had been used, something similar had been used in Irish jobs previously, but there had been some problems with it, so particularly the safety barrier down through the liner in some instances, or perhaps the liner wasn't tied back into the pavement or connected to the pavement, so some of the water was escaping outside of the liner. And also the detailing around how the liner connects to chambers was something that we need to consider. At Roadbridge, to our credit, carrying out a trial section, we just had a look at some of the photos. So this is the kind of box cut for the grass surface water channel, the liner being installed, backfilled with N4, sealed the pavement, and then obviously the detailing around the structures and the chambers needed some work as well. One of the other systems we used were linear attenuation systems. So in Ireland, unlike in the UK, we are allowed to use something called over the edge drainage, where the water from an embankment is allowed to flow over the edge, over the verge, down the earthworks embankments, and into a collection system at the base of the embankment. Subsurface drainage in that instance is provided through the extension of the capping layer. So in this instance, the over the edge drainage was down to a sway or linear attenuation system. So the linear attenuation system it collected the water, B treated it, and C attenuated it. So it's doing the job of what might otherwise be done by three different systems. And I suppose going back to the alignment design, you can see that we have just about enough LMA there. Both sides kind of it was a happy coincidence that the embankment sizes had reduced, so the earthworks optimizations had reduced the embankment sizes, generated more space within the LMA in order for us to fit these linear attenuation systems in. Okay, so just I suppose the other feature of note there is just the check dams along the length of the attenuation system. That's just helps us to maximize the storage space within the system, particularly where the system is on steep ground. So hopefully we see a few photos of those here. Didn't get any updated photos there, but that's some of the check dams being constructed along this way, and in time those side slopes will be sloped and seeded, and they should become nice areas for biodiversity, and a lot of them will be planted with wildflower seed or native seed. To increase the biodiversity value of them. Another shot of over this way kind of constructed there. Just on the earthworks design there, so Brian kind of outlined the volumes associated with the earthworks. So you're well into the million meters cubed of earthworks, 760,000 meters cubed of unsuitable material which was largely peat, also marl and alluvium. So typically it was a dig and replace methodology that was employed probably through 90% of the scheme. And below here is a typical detail that we would have used for the excavate and replace. Some people might be familiar with that detail from other projects. It's a similar detail to what was used on other schemes. There was one section where we used vertical drains and surcharging. So that was just at the southern tip, kind of where we're coming back online with the existing N4. So it's just a 150 meter long section. So in the first instance, all the organic peat material is removed from the cutting. But at that stage, there's still marl and alluvium up to 10 meters deep. So in order to ensure all the settlement, that material was fully settled prior to road construction, there was a surcharge embankment placed on top of that material. The height of the surcharge embankment was 2.5 meters. Vertical drains were installed through to relieve the poor water pressure. They were installed at 1 meter centres on a triangular grid. And the design surcharge period was initially 7.5 meters with instrumentation and monitoring installed to monitor the settlement. So ultimately, I believe the surcharge period based on the monitoring results was brought down to about 6 to 6 months. It was actually just taken off. It was the last thing to be done prior to the first lockdown. Okay. Just one of another interesting elements was the use of counterfeit drains, just to assist with slope stability. So shallow and deep drains were used. The requirement for the slope drains, the counterfeit drains was based on sonometer readings on site and also site observations. So the depths were typically limited to 2 meters, and they were installed at 2 meter centres. Where necessary, where otherwise would require deeper drains, berms or additional toe drains were installed to limit both the depth and the extent, the number of the counterfeit drains. So again, a significant piece of work in and of itself. You can see the scale and size of those drains by reference to the main stand beside them, the machinery. So in some of the deep cuttings that were used quite a bit. Just to tell you a little bit about the detail, the pavement design, then I'll go into detail on the online, on the offline section, but on the online section, we sought to incorporate the existing pavement into the new pavement. So we'll have a look at some video later to see where that's been incorporated. But in order to do that, we carried out a suite of testing that included FWD tests, assessment of cores, ITSM testing, DCBs, and visual assessment. So the condition assessment looked at the results of all those. So the visual assessment initially determined that the pavement surface was in reasonably good condition, suitable for reuse. Again, the assessment of cores, kind of the cores were reasonably solid, and the FWD assessments with a couple of limited exceptions kind of showed that the pavement and pavement foundations were in good condition and suitable for reuse as part of an overlay design. So the last step in that process was to carry out a residual life assessment. So there was a couple of limited locations where we needed to increase the overall depth of the pavement, but then through the depth ultimately was governed by the new level. So obviously you're replacing a single carriageway with a 2+2 carriageway. You can't just exactly match the levels you're talking about. Changed alignment and changed ground level, so we have super elevation in some instances where there wasn't super elevation before. We're able to reuse a not insignificant amount of the existing pavement. I might just hand you over to Billy at that stage, who's going to talk you through the structures design.
Sorry, I'm just having issues sharing there. Not going to be sorted out. Okay. Okay, so I'll just give a brief run through the structures on the scheme. It was 4 overbridges, 6 underbridges, 2 river bridges. There was a pilot embankment originally proposed, but that was ultimately designed out along with 3 retaining walls and a number of ancillary structures, including environmental barriers, culverts, and gantry foundations. Just to run through the overbridges first. They're all fairly similar construction, 3-span integral bridges constructed using W9 precast beams and in situ concrete decks. Intermediate supports were columns on ground bearing foundations, and the abutments were high level bank seats, again on ground bearing foundations with 6N upfill where required from suitable bearing stratum. There's just some pictures of one of the bridges being constructed. So these are the foundations and the intermediate support columns in place. This is it with the deck almost complete, just the parapet edge beam remaining, and that's the final overbridge structure there. Of the 6 underbridges, I think 5 of them were this precast concrete box structure, buried structures underneath the main line. They were all about 7.6 meter span, varying length depending on the skew of the road under the main line. Again, just some photographs of them being constructed. Obviously the box structure in place here being backfilled with the reinforced soil wing walls being constructed at the same time. That's one of the final structures there. There was one, the structure 11 there over the existing N4 carriageway. I suppose this was a high skew structure. I think the main line crosses the old N4 at about a 40-degree skew. So the structure was squared up to 25 degrees. So it has triangular dead areas on both sides with the main line in the center of the deck. It was constructed using MY7 precast beams with infill concrete then for the deck. Abutments were high-level bank seats founded on reinforced soil embankment abutments. So this was a slight change from the specimen design. The specimen design had columns coming down to a low-level bank seat. We managed to change the proposal here slightly just to ease construction. So that's simpler to construct the reinforced soil abutments and construct the bank seat at high level than to do columns and have to thread your reinforcing straps through the columns or around the columns. The bridge span is about 19 meters, say, along the skew with a 12-meter carriageway width below the structure. Again, this is just the reinforced earth abutments being constructed over there with obviously the live carriageway on the existing N4, and that's the finalized structure there over the existing carriageway. 2 river bridges were quite similar. They're about a 20-meter clear span, integral structures with W3 precast beams, in situ concrete deck slab with in situ concrete abutments. There was a few modifications made here during the detail design. We managed to reduce the clearance requirements here from 4 meters down to about 2 meters, which helped obviously with the embankment height on the approach to the structures. Again, this was done through additional BAT surveys and to review the EIS requirements to confirm that the original 4-meter clearance could be reduced. Additionally, one of the river bridges, structure 8, was originally proposed to be piled. These rivers were to be diverted underneath the structures. So just by moving the structure slightly and increasing the length of the river diversion, to a location where there was better ground, we were able to obviously remove the need for piling, and obviously there was ground treatment required, which was excavate and replace. So these would have been built up off 6N, and the abutments constructed then on top of the 6N material below. Again, this is the final structure, picture of the final structure, and I think that's it. I'll hand you back again now.
Thanks for that, Billy. So some very good presentations there. At the stage where I think Sean is going to show us video, and while we're watching the video, we're just going to do some Q&A over that. There's actually no sound on the video, so if you're wondering why there's no sound, but we'll use the opportunity while the video is playing to do some questions and answers. So the chat facility is there if anyone wants to add their question to it. But I might just kick off myself with a question maybe for Sean. Just in your presentation, Sean, or sorry, for Brian, question for Brian. In your presentation, you mentioned the considered construction scheme. And I just wondered, was there incentives in that, or how do you account for such good scoring in that scheme?
I think, Liam, like, it's something that the company has bought into over the last 7 or 8 years, and the fact that we're a partner with Considerate Constructors, all our employees are, I suppose, used to delivering a fairly high quality product, to be fair to them. Each one of them have bought into it. So I think when you have that from the employees and from the staff, it certainly makes things easier. And look, we feel as well that we're giving something back to the local community. I suppose we're on a project for 2 to 3 years, and it's always good to feel that we have contributed in some capacity, be it to schools or to local businesses or whatever the case may be.
Very good. I don't know, Sean, do you want to jump in and just maybe talk about a little bit about what we're watching on the screen?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So if you've got any questions as we go, just feel free. So we just if I jump back just a second there, we're looking at the east-west link. This video is obviously speeding up, the way that cars aren't actually traveling that fast. But this is Tubber Ride roundabout there, Roadbridge compound behind it. And so we're just about to start looking at the eastern parallel link. Where the road was, the N4 traffic was diverted onto this road. So we can see over to the right, the old N4 traffic's now been taken off, and the traffic has been moved on to the eastern parallel. What you're looking at there is quite a large embankment, and as part of the design I mentioned, we moved the cycleway over to the side there so that you don't have the same earthworks associated with the cycleway as for the traffic road, and it's away from the road. But you can see the works progressing there on the online section there, so that pavement's been broken out while the traffic has been diverted onto the new road.
Very good. Sean, maybe a question for yourself while the video is playing. You mentioned in your presentation an area where you were enhancing the biodiversity.
Yeah.
To what extent do you find, like for projects like this, that the biodiversity issue is becoming more of a focus, or is it an increasing consideration?
So I suppose it starts with the EIS. So the EIS would have identified a number of environmentally sensitive areas associated with the scheme. So there's a number of fens and locks, and you can see one of them here, Clandillon lock. So the first thing to do is, part of your route selection, you consider the environmental sensitive areas around the scheme and avoid them as best you can. And only there afterwards, as you progress, you start to talk about mitigation and mitigation measures employed. And there was a number of mitigation measures associated with associated with the environmental schemes. You can see just down at the bottom corner there's a weir associated with this lake to maintain the levels in the lake. We replaced the culvert, a pipe culvert with a 3x2 box. So the weir was installed to maintain the levels in the lake and to ensure that that doesn't drain more than it did in the pre-construction scenario, which might affect the ecology in the area. And then further down, there was particular measures associated with the fens, with other fens and locks that we come to. And obviously, then in addition, there's a lot of different landscaping requirements that focus on replacement of natural habitat with like for like, or improving the natural habitat. As I mentioned, as part of the drainage design, we sought to use subsystems. So it's probably a long-winded way of answering the question, but there is and has been for a while significant focus on the impact of the road schemes. Probably what's still missing is an overall carbon assessment. So carbon footprint assessment of these schemes, and certainly I think it would be actually helpful from a designers and contractors point of view to be able to to have a carbon score and a carbon target. It certainly would have helped us probably to get some of the opportunities over the line if we were able to if we had a carbon tool, a carbon goal. Because a lot of, anytime we're reducing embankments, anytime we're using such drainage systems, we're obviously reducing the carbon footprint of the scheme as well. So it would be nice to see those goals incorporated into the schemes going forward, I should say.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for that, Sean. We have a question in the chat there. Was there much flood risk you had to consider as part of the environment/drainage planning? So the risks of flooding as part of the scheme.
Yeah, so again, that starts at the EIS stage. So environmental impact statement would have carried out a full flood risk assessment, and that's what would have dictated a number of the sizes of the structures and the river bridges that Billy went through. Typically clear span structures over the two rivers, and a number of large box culverts as well. So that would have been covered initially in the EIS, and we would have subsequently done our own work on our own flood studies to kind of confirm that we were happy that we weren't increasing flooding upstream or downstream. I would just approach it just as we speak about the environmental sensitive areas. This large area here, you can almost see from the discoloration and the difference in colour is a wetland and a large fen area. And there's a number of measures incorporated into the design and the works requirements to ensure the protection of that fen area and to ensure that the water, particularly that the water that got there in the pre-construction scenario still gets there post-construction.
Very good, thanks, Sean. Can I just ask Billy, maybe just in terms of the structural design, which of the structures did you think was the most challenging, or the most challenging in terms of the different structures that were part of this project?
I suppose these structures were all fairly straightforward. There was no unusual kind of large span structure or anything like that. I suppose of them, it would have been the 3-span overbridges are probably the more complex in that they're obviously larger, the largest spans I suppose on the scheme, and the multiple spans, integral structures, they were probably the more complex of the different types.
From a procedural point of view, Billy, I suppose the change from the 4-meter clearance to 2-meter clearance.
Yeah. For the river bridges, it took some time, I suppose, to get the various bat surveys and stuff like that in place, and convincing the client that the 4-meter clearance requirements that they had specified, I think it was specified to allow a particular type of bat to fly underneath the bridge along the river. But I suppose our surveys concluded that that bat wasn't really present in this location, and we were able to reduce the height. But it took a while, I suppose, to go through all that with the client.
just a process that you need to go through, and obviously it requires interface from the design team. So it would have required interface between the line designer and structures with Billy and the environmental team as well. So and then obviously, you know, we would have carried out consultations with IFI, not with IFI, but the input PWS, and you know, in respect to that. And then obviously you develop all that up into a report and submit it for approval with the client. You can see here, just as we go through the flythrough, some of the sways kind of taking shape. So as I mentioned, a lot of the drainage is over the edge into linear attenuation systems. And we'll see some good examples a little bit further on. One of the other elements, I suppose, is the deposition area. So just as we go, we should probably point out the deposition areas. There's a large one just on the right. So I think previously we mentioned that every scrap of land on the project, all the unsuitable material is stored online. If I'm taking your role here, but some large deposition areas here, and every scrap of land on the job is probably used up as a deposition area.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, management of the substantial quantities of peat was a challenge. The LMA was quite generous in places, and you can see there's 3 or 4 fairly substantial areas there where we would have deposited peat, created cells and deposited peat, we'll say. And particularly in the northern half of the project, it was quite difficult. But as I said, the LMA was generous in places, and it allowed us to manage all the unsuitable material within the LMA, and negated the need for any material to go off site, which was a real bonus.
Just to give you an idea of scale, so this deposition area, this section of the road would have originally been in a very small amount of embankment, and obviously by virtue, and this side road would have been on quite a large embankment. By virtue of the deposition area, you can see that the road's now effectively in cut, you know, so that just kind of tells you the scale of some of the volumes of materials. And this video was taken in December as well, so I suppose it'll be greening up just as we've gone through spring.
Okay, we're getting close to 1 o'clock. I don't know if Sean, if there's any bits of the video that you want to jump forward to, or particular highlights before we finish up.
We see the compact grade separated junction there. Might just jump up to the end and the tie-in point. Have a quick look. This is coming up to the second river bridge on the Drumfin River. So it's quite an extensive flooding through this area. So somebody's asking about flooding, flood risk assessment. So this was something that was known to the design team as we entered into the detailed design and construction, and would have been taken account of. But the shoulders of the embankments were designed with I think it's class 1 material to cater for the flood waters that we know to be present there. 20-meter span structure there, so you can see there's a couple more examples of swales and the linear attenuation systems just along there. Let's jump through. I think, Brian, we mentioned previously the construction of the embankments on the side slope is another challenge. The benching in.
Yeah, I suppose as you look at the overview there, you had a cut embankment on the left hand side, and you had fill on the right. So essentially, our new N4 was constructed on the side of a fairly steep enough slope embankment, so that step detail there would have been quite challenging. Yes, generally material from the cut embankments was usable in the fill embankments. It was where the fills had peat, where we took it down up to 8 meters. That was one of the biggest difficulties in the project.
A couple of good examples there of the linear attenuation systems on either side. This deposition area here is, I believe, it's the one we showed earlier on, where we were showing that the there's the rock excavation area, all backfilled now.
Okay, we're just coming up to 1 o'clock now, so unfortunately we'll have to close the webinar at this stage. A big thank you to Brian, Brian, Sean, and Billy for I think what everyone will agree was an absolutely fantastic presentation, very interesting, and hope people will take away something from it. I certainly did. So a big thank you also to Kate and Catherine in PIG HQ for their invaluable assistance, as always, for hosting these webinar events. And finally, thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.